OverBoost 33. OverBoost is a podcast interview series featuring discussions with speedrunners about their history in speedrunning and gaming and the runs they're passionate about. I am your host, PMC Trilogy, and with me today is PeekingBoo. PeekingBoo, thank you so much for joining me.
Hello, what's up? Thank you very much.
Now, I always like to start these off with some current events, and I feel like I might as well, give away the game. The reason I saw your name was probably, maybe the reason some other people saw your name recently, which was, I think when the GDQ games list dropped, I feel like the two things I saw in most of the articles about, things that writers felt were interesting in the games list were Hades and Celeste on dance pads. And so, obviously, this is a podcast about personal speedrunner history. So we're gonna go long on that. But up front, for anyone who maybe is less familiar with you, I wanted to give you an opportunity to give a sales pitch for why somebody should watch your run at the upcoming AGDQ 2021.
Okay. Wow, you put me on the spot there. Okay, so, my stream is pretty much unlike any other stream that you will see during the GDQ event. You can kind of see just on the edge of the webcam here, there is a little arrow. There's about 8 of those, and I'll be stepping on all of them in order to play a game. So if that sounds exciting to you, then be sure to check it out, because that's what we do all the time here on my channel.
That's the simple pitch, right? I think that's been one of the great parts of the online GDQ, especially from SGDQ, was for people who have special setups, Half-Life Alyx VR, Pump It Up, that they don't have to do anything with those, and that they can just sort of bring them, to the event virtually. It's been a nice thing. Let's go into your history then, because I imagine the fact that you're doing Celeste with dance pads involves a lot of things that preceded it. So let's go to the very beginning. Where does gaming start for you? Is it something from particular family, friends? Like what era does that start for you?
Okay, wow, we're going all the way back.
All the way back.
So I was 4 years old. I was my very first console was a Super Nintendo, and I got Super Mario All-Stars, and that's pretty much where everything began. My biggest gaming memory from back then, from being 4 years old, is that my mum never let me play video games while chewing gum, because I always got gum stuck under the buttons somehow.
Okay, no, that's fair.
I don't know how, but yeah. So that's all I really have as far as my early days go. But I've always been tied to playing platformers and Mario, and so with the Super Nintendo, which was more or less the king console for platforming back then, you had your Mario, your Yoshi's Island, your Donkey Kong Country. All of those games were kind of what I grew up with and what I'm best at, and so that's why most of the games that I'm good at running are platformers.
Now I have to ask, just because it's an area that I'm unfamiliar with, but I know, so it's listed on your Twitter bio, so I'm going to say that you're in Western Australia, and
yep.
Was that where you grew up? Because one of the things I often find interesting is the extent to which access shapes our taste. That we had access to these things, and so they are the things we end up enjoying. And so I feel like releases in the for your region, which I guess is part of the PAL region, they're not always there. Not all games get released for that region. So I'm wondering, were there any games that were maybe unique to your area, or things that you feel like, yo, man, I missed out on this. If I had played this, it would have been different?
So that's a good question, and it's really hard to answer, especially when you're growing up in that region, because when I was growing up, it was before the internet. It was before knowledge of gaming and things like that were well known. So all I really had to, expand my knowledge of gaming were those little advertising pamphlets that came in your video game boxes. So I knew about Secret of Mana, and I knew about, Legend of Zelda and things like that, but they were never really in the forefront of what I wanted to play, because I didn't have friends that played them, and it was kind of a time when I wasn't old enough to read or anything like that just yet. So with stuff like that, my parents got the early exposure to, he likes the run and jump games. Let's just keep getting him those. So I grew up with all of those games, and those are the games that kept getting bought for me. So yeah, the one thing I do know that I didn't grow up with until much later was Mario RPG, which wasn't released in Australia at all. So when I was a bit older and went through the process that everyone goes through of illegally acquiring video games from the internet, I discovered Mario RPG, thought it was some sort of fan game, but then really loved it anyway, and eventually looked into it a bit more. So that's pretty much like all of my game expertise there, is that I played Mario, and then I kind of jumped over to RPGs kind of when I played Mario RPG. That's pretty much it, though.
No,
we're very isolated here in West Australia. It's a very empty place.
No, I can only imagine. Really, I don't know. I mean, I've been to the center of the U.S., which certainly has some empty places, but I live in the Philadelphia area in the Northeast, which is kind of like the densest part of the U.S. There's always something around somewhere. All right, so going from there, then another question I like to ask too, because we're adults who now spend a lot of our hard-earned income on fancy toys like microphones and streaming equipment, and as I'm sure we'll discover soon, dance pads. And I like to ask, is there a point where you feel like you took ownership of your gaming hobby? And what I mean by that is that you saved up your own money to get a console or PC for the first time, got a job and did that, something around that, something in that neighborhood, probably in your teenage years maybe.
Yeah, so my first console that I got for myself with my own money was a Nintendo DS. And then very shortly after that, I realized how much things cost and how little I earn, and how much of a huge problem that was. So that was kind of my first and last. And I went from a Nintendo DS, and then Nintendo DS, and then the Wii, and then by that point I was financially independent and what have you, but I've pretty much always just stuck to Nintendo consoles because, one, they're usually cheaper, and two, they usually have a very big game library, or they have a lot of games that I'm used to playing.
The games that you want to play anyway.
Exactly. So it is really interesting to look back on it all, though, and how usually whatever console you start with is kind of what you're with for life as far as your first preference goes.
No, you're not wrong. I definitely, for me, I ended up being a PlayStation kid because the PlayStation 1 was sort of my true first thing, and that translates a little bit to the PS2, but it does stick with you. Kind of like, I feel like people say that all the time about music taste. The music you listen to in like your early teens or preteen years ends up defining a lot, and I think it's something to be said for that being true with consoles as well. A question. So I'm going to ask this one. I feel like the answer, based on what we discussed so far, is going to be not really. But
okay,
because speedrunning typically focuses on single player games, that means that typically someone who's streaming speedruns is not going to be exposing the part of their gaming life that is the multiplayer stuff most often. And so I wanted to ask, have you done any sort of, either that could be old multiplayer, GoldenEye on the N64 kind of thing, or, newer stuff, your MMOs, League of Legends, that kind of thing. Have you done much with that? Have you had any phases with those kinds of games?
No, so most of my childhood was I don't have any brothers or sisters, and there wasn't really a lot of kids growing up. So I had pretty much one friend that we would both play through Mario and Donkey Kong and all of those games through together. And if you're not familiar with how games like that were back in the 90s, it wasn't so much a multiplayer experience where you both play at the same time. It was sort of player one would play and then player two would play, and you'd keep taking turns to get to the end of the game, either working together or as a contest against one another to see who beat more stages. And then that kind of just that was just kind of the norm for me. The only other multiplayer experience I really had was Pokemon. So, growing up and transitioning all the way through to adulthood, I was always just doing single player games. And usually when multiplayer games come out, I kind of shy away from them a bit unless they have a like some sort of single player campaign, which is great when Splatoon came out, because even though it was focused as a multiplayer game, it had single player stuff. But yeah, for the most part, it's just been not really exactly as you say.
Yeah, no, and again, that's fine. Believe me, I'm in and out of love for multiplayer. I think I avoided it for like 10 years, came back to it for a few years, and now I'm like, you know what, the internet's bad. I'm just gonna play 20-year-old games again instead.
For sure.
So in that case, I think my next set of questions, I need to get the order here right, because I sense there are two big things going on here. One of them is where I'm going to ask about how you found about speedrunning, but the other is, I'm assuming by the fact that you have these dance pads that you are probably into DDR or some other rhythm game. Which of those comes first, the speedrunning or rhythm games?
Rhythm games definitely comes first.
Okay, well, how did you get into rhythm games then? Seems like that's a big subject.
Yeah, so rhythm games were when I was 17. I was going to like a tertiary college to learn graphic design and various multimedia things. And during between classes, sometimes you just have massive breaks, upward of 2 to 3 hours from when class A finishes to when class B begins. And so whatever classmates I was hanging out with at the time, sometimes we'd go and get lunch, and then other times we would go to the arcade, and it just kind of became one of those things where we would just try out random games, and DDR happened to be one of the random games that we tried out. Now, unbeknownst to everyone else, myself included, I suppose, is that I actually really enjoyed it, and despite everyone else not really thinking much of it, I kept coming back in my own time. So that's kind of how it started, and it was a really weird thing for anyone that hasn't played DDR before. When you play it for the first time and you step up on the stage, you think everybody in the arcade is looking at you, and you're really scared to fail, and you think that it's a really it's kind of a very nerve-wracking experience, but you kind of have to push through it and just keep failing and keep trying, because that's the only way you can kind of get ahead with that game. But that's pretty much where it started. It's been about 14 years now. It's crazy.
And so for you ended up, I imagine, keeping playing on arcade setups rather than the home experience, because I feel like in where I was when it became popular, when DDR became popular, there were still some arcades in the area and arcade setups, but also it became very popular to get the versions of the game that were available for PS2 or Xbox. I know I had DDR Ultramix for Xbox. Did you have any of those kinds of plastic mat home versions, or were you just playing in arcades?
Yeah, I was just playing in arcades. So that's pretty much where my income from my job was going most of the time. It was just a lot of, you start making friends in the arcades, and so then, when you're taking turns and what have you, you're socializing. That was when I would be playing on my Nintendo DS while waiting for other games and whatnot. But yeah, I never had a PS2 or an Xbox or any of those other consoles that had the home games on it. So the only other way I could play when I wasn't in the arcade was to play Stepmania, which is the PC equivalent of DDR. And so I did that. Eventually, I went on to buy a soft mat that I could plug into my PC, and it was an awful experience compared to the arcades. And that's just what kind of motivated me to keep going back to the arcades, because it was just such a more enriching experience. Because it's louder, it's you're surrounded by people. It's a much different atmosphere to when you're at home, kind of squishing a mat on a carpet.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you bring up a point here. I was curious if me asking the multiplayer question was going to get you to bring up your rhythm game experience, especially, playing in arcades and stuff like that. And even though maybe it's not quite what we think of, or what I hinted at as the question being aimed towards. You know, obviously League of Legends a different creature, but you know, the arcade experience is valuable nonetheless, and I think, you know, you valued it so much that at some point you must. Now, is the setup behind you, is that your first? Did you ever have another arcade setup, or is that the first set you got and you've maintained it since then?
Yeah, this is my first and only. Thankfully, you know, these are built for arcade use. You know, these are built to be used by different people of varying shapes, sizes, and they're designed to be on 24/7. Well, not 24/7, but, you know, they're designed to be used all day, every day until they break. And, you know, they do break, but thankfully I have a lot of spare parts that it doesn't really matter. But yeah, it's, what am I trying to say here? This one that I got has been lasting me since 2011 when I got it, and even then it wasn't new. They're definitely built to last, which is great.
All right, so then can we get the story then of, first off, your decision to get the dance pad, and then what you had to do to procure it?
Yeah, sure. So when we have to throw back to how old I was. So I was 19. Most of my social life was spent at the arcade. Most of my work was either a train ride away or a bus ride away. It was something that I never really needed a car for. And so when the time came while I was kind of entering adulthood to either get my license, you know, pay for driving lessons, pay for registration, all of that stuff, and get a car, or weigh up the cost that I'm already spending in the arcade by, you know, spending $1 to do 2 or 3 songs, which will last me 15 minutes. If I'm there for 5 hours, that can quickly add up on a daily basis. So am I going to spend a few $1,000s on a car, which will further cost me money? Or am I going to spend a few $1,000s on an arcade machine that will save me money? And later down the line, which we never saw coming, eventually make me money through my stream. So that was the logic behind it, is that I saw it as a investment opportunity for something that I didn't see myself stopping playing anytime soon, and that's pretty much all there is to it. As far as acquiring it goes, though, that was a little more tricky. So you've got pretty much 3 ways that you can get an arcade machine with relative ease. Mm-hmm. You've got either the arcade itself, which if they are looking to upgrade to a later model, they'll try and sell off their existing hardware so that they make a, what am I trying to say here? So that they don't lose out on just putting it in storage. Then you've got eBay, where you don't really know what you're paying for because, you know, you can't inspect the hardware. You just have to hope that what's pictured is what's there, and away you go. And then the final one, which is where I got mine, was from the actual storage facility itself, which usually also doubles as a party hire business as well. So they store arcade machines, and then for a fee, they can lease it out for corporate events and personal parties and things like that. Now, unlike other arcade machines, which are usually just, you know, like this single column, you stand in front of it, hit buttons, DDR is huge, and it's heavy, and it's awkward and annoying to set up. And I think for the most part, they were also just keen to get rid of the machine so that it didn't take up much space, and they didn't have to go through all the hassle of setting it up every time. So that's all there was to it. You know, I found one that was in relatively decent condition, local to my area. We checked it out, and then we brought it home. And everywhere I've moved, it's been an absolute hassle ever since.
Now, does it? So, okay, so the heaviest thing that follows me around in my life is a baby grand piano, which basically you just hire professional piano movers to handle. I assume to some extent things separate. Does that make it easier? Does it separate into enough pieces that it isn't a hassle, or do you still have like the cab itself is just an immovable object?
Okay, I'll move the camera a bit actually, just so you can see. Oh, that was bad. I shouldn't have done this. Help. Okay, so you can see over there how there's two pads. You got the blue and the red. So there's kind of this bar on the front and back of it that combines them together. So what you can do is you can unscrew that, which then separates them. So then they become their own individual pads. They become their own individual pads that you can then lower the legs of them for and wheel them around. And each one of those weighs about 50 to 100. No, they weigh about 50 kilo. No, it's 100 kilos. They weigh 100 kilograms each, which I think is about what's that? About 40 pounds or so.
I think so.
I think they're about. No, sorry, it's the other way around. 250 pounds each. So.
Oh, yeah, that's heavy.
220 pounds. Yes. Yeah, so each pad is about 220 pounds.
Wow.
And then the actual cabinet itself, which has the screen and the computer and everything inside, is a further 150 kilos, which, about 300 pounds. So, adding all of those together is a real hassle to move. I need to fix my camera. So
no, please. You got the G4 camera angle from the early 2000s there.
Yeah. All right. Man, how did this sit before? Feel free to ask another question, though. I'll just
sure. No, that's fine. So I think then the thing would be the seems like the question in my mind, and one of the great benefits of watching a bunch of marathon VODs for an upcoming guest is that oftentimes people will ask some of the obvious questions during marathon, so I get sort of previews. And it sounds like at some point, I think for the most part, you were happy with your acquisition of the DDR pads. You played DDR, you probably played other rhythm games. You want to talk about that, certainly. But at some point, it sounds like maybe you were feeling like you were done. You wanted to do something else with the dance pads. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. Not done. I think done is the wrong word. It was just, it's just one of those things when, when you're surrounded by friends, sometimes something comes up in your conversation and then one of you just thinks, you know what, that's dumb enough that we just have to try it out. And what that ended up being was I had a couple of friends over, and we thought it would just be a cool idea to see what it would be like if you turned the dance pads into a giant controller. So the first thing we did is we put an NES emulator on it because that was the easiest thing to put on, and we played Mario Bros. 3 just to see how stupid it was. And I can assure you it was very stupid. But that's pretty much how it all started. Like, it was just one of those things where we did it just because we could. And then I was just kind of starting out on Twitch at that point where I was just streaming rhythm games, or DDR, I should say, and decided that, I'll kind of give my channel a bit of a 180 here and try to, record / stream all of my attempts of whatever game I decide to try and play with that. So with that, my whole stream started with Mario 3, and yeah, it's been crazy to see where it's gone from there.
So so we've gone over in detail one of the essential ingredients, which is the dance pads. The other ingredient here, I feel like, is your knowledge or becoming aware of speedrunning. How did you first learn about speedrunning?
So speedrunning, I think this is many people's origin story with speedrunning. So I was on Twitch in the 2011 days and discovered Siglemic, who was just running Mario 64 constantly. And it was, the craziest thing that we'd ever seen. Mario was flipping around all over the place, and we've never seen the game glitched out quite as much as that, and what have you. And it was just a really huge communal thing to be a part of, where everyone is popping off over the collection of stars and whatnot. And that's where it started for me as far as my awareness of speedrunning goes. But it wasn't until I started getting followed by a couple of speedrunners on Twitch, actually, where I would be playing the game casually on my own, what a lot of the speedrunners typically do is when they're finished with their game, they'll go and raid another smaller stream that's playing the game that they're playing. It's a way for them to discover who's speedrunning. Sometimes they're just browsing offline to see, what the whole scene is up to. And so a couple of the first people that dropped into my channel, which were Raisefire and Wilco, they were Mario Sunshine speedrunners. And from there, they were talking to me a lot, and then I started watching their stream a lot. And it kind of went a bit of back and forth there, where from watching what they were doing, I kind of wanted to get involved with that myself. And also, being a small streamer, I kind of wanted to get raided from these people that I just started talking to. So, I kind of just tried to toy with the idea of, hey, I can speedrun too, even though I'm using dance pads. Raid my channel, please. So,
I mean,
so
that's you hate to put it in those sort of like transactional terms, but it's true, right? I mean, being friends with people is good. It does have benefits. You also want to be friends because it's a good thing to do. But yes, it does help.
yeah. Well, it helps with growth for sure. And I mean, at that point, I was at maybe 500 followers. I was getting maybe 4 average viewers in my stream. Like I was still super small, and it's very rare to see larger streamers taking an interest in what I'm doing. And so, yeah, like it was kind of just the next logical step of, well, I kind of want to cater more toward what people are watching. And so I'm going to do more of what you guys are doing. And, hopefully that comes back in some way.
So fast forward, you are of course now a Twitch partner, whatever that's worth. Do you feel like there was a particular turning point in terms of, I played this game and it, made an audience, it brought an audience to me, or, any other particular event, maybe some marathon appearance or something like that?
Regarding my viewership, like
regarding your viewership,
Yeah, so actually, the way that came about was I discovered the website that I Ate Your Pie made, which was streambig.net.
I've heard
I don't know if you've been there.
I watched I Ate Your Pie. I used to watch a lot more, especially during his PUBG days. For some reason, that was very fascinating to me. But anyway, please continue.
Yeah, so I mean, if you go on that website now, you can find one of his old posts where you'll actually find a comment from me on there where I asked him for some advice, saying, my main thing on my channel is I play games with dance pads, and the biggest struggle I have with doing that is that when I get stuck playing a game and I can't progress, I don't really know how to fill the dead air. And pretty much what he said to me was, I should try to find some other content that I can do that basically isn't dance pad gameplay. And so, that's kind of a tricky thing to hear when you've based your whole stream about doing something like that. But that's what I started doing. I started switching over to casual gaming, where I sit at the PC like this, and that is where I started doing speed runs with my hands. So I was playing Shovel Knight, Plague of Shadows. We were doing casual playthroughs of Pokemon and stuff like that on here, and so with that, it added a bit more variety to the stream, which helped with my viewership. And then I would go back and do my dance pad thing. And so the people that started watching me through the variety would kind of stick around and talk to me during the parts where there was a lot of dead air. So suddenly conversation was flowing when the gameplay wasn't. And then it just helped things go from there. So I definitely owe a lot of that early day success to that website, from what I was reading, as well as that bit of advice that he gave back to me as well. So
yeah, no, I Eat Your Pie is a good guy, and that site, I think, especially especially in the early days when he wrote it, was a good resource with some strong points, early on, at a time when I feel like now you have a lot of, like, YouTube is saturated with that kind of streaming advice stuff, but I definitely feel like he
for sure
had some strong points. All right, so we've kind of, I think, have done a lot of setting up of things here. Before I ask some other kind of setup questions, you've done quite a few games now at this point, in your dance pad speedrunning. Do you have an overall favorite that's just your favorite run to do?
Yeah, so favorite is easily Mario 64. That was also my first my first speed game that I learned how to do, and without a doubt, it's the game that, even though I've ran it to death, I'll still come back to it and play it. And thankfully, because 16 star is so short, it's just something that I can just do without thinking. And it's one of those things similar to what I was just saying before, where if I reach the point of my stream where, I finished something half an hour early, or I'm stuck doing something, it's just one of those things where you can fill the dead air with, it's like, well, I'm not having fun anymore, let's play Mario 64. And then that covers you for a little bit while you either think of something else to do, or I don't know, it just changes the vibe of the stream. So I've always enjoyed Mario 64, and I think that's why it is such a popular speed game in general, because it's so easy to pick up and play, and doesn't have a lot of the other drawbacks that other games have, such as how much time passes when you die, or how much time you actually need to do the game in general. Because a lot of any % runs are usually a lot more than just 30 minutes, and I don't know. It's just one of those nice games to just pick up and play.
Now, I do have to ask the follow-up question. So would you say, of the categories, I noticed you've done 3 categories, would you say 16 star is the favorite for, some of the reasons that you mentioned, or? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, for sure. So 16 star, the way that started was I wanted to see if I could do all of the tricks in a 16 star run. It was the same as when you're doing the dance pad challenge of, can I beat the game? I'd already beat Mario 64, so I wanted to see, can I clip into the cage for the chain chomp? Can I clip through the door with MIPS? Can I do the backward long jumps? And then when I could, it was like, well, then what's stopping me from just doing it as a speed run? And so that's where that started. But yeah, 16 star will always be the game. The category that I like the most with that, just because it's basically a humble beginning.
Now, what about the flip side? And again, this is not an opportunity to put a community on blast. This is just saying, of the runs that you have done, what has been your least favorite? You're probably not going to come back to. It really wasn't for you, but you did do it.
I'm going to have to quickly bring up my profile, because
you are not the first guest to do this, believe me.
If there's a game that I'm not coming back to, I have to assume it's one I've completely forgotten about. So let's take a look. I know that I did a semi-blind playthrough of Sonic Mania, which I only did once. And it's not that I wouldn't do the game again. I think it's just because it didn't really have that much of a draw for me. But looking here, I think it would honestly be Splatoon 2. Splatoon 2 it's not a fun category. It's not a fun game to run, I should say. Any % or all scrolls. It's just, it's just not enjoyable. I'm just staring at that box art, going, man. What happened?
While we're here, maybe on the subject of Splatoon, one of the runs I did watch was I watched a part of your all scrolls run for the first Splatoon, because I think that was one of the games that you had mentioned to me when we were setting this interview up, and I was very curious about that because, if you were to tell me this initial premise, dance pad speedruns, I would say, like, okay, well, D-pad and face buttons, like, what can you do with that? Sometimes you'll map certain buttons to certain places. But then my brain would say, well, what about when you have 2 analog sticks and you need to, move and look at the same time? And so I was very interested to see how you did the first Splatoon, and also how you connect it to it. Do you have to do anything special for some of these consoles, like the Wii U, to get your dance pads to be in conversation with the Wii U, or is that set up there pretty already?
No, the Wii U is a bit wild. It's certainly been a wild journey. and it's changed over the years. So if just to give the brief history lesson, in 2015, the homebrew scene for the Wii U was still relatively new. Not new, but newish, new enough. The Wii U had been out since 2012. Obviously, it takes a little bit for the consoles to get hacked, and then for things to go onto the consoles to run. The way that I was connecting to the Wii U back in 2015 was that we had a separate laptop that was put next to my DDR pads. The pads were connected to the laptop, and then the laptop was running some software that was spoofing the MAC address of the Wii U gamepad. And so what that basically means is that the Wii U gamepad would have to be wrapped in alfoil so that it doesn't broadcast or receive any signals. And then anything that I was doing on the dance pads was going through the laptop, and the laptop was communicating with the Wii U, saying, yes, hello, I'm the Wii U gamepad. I'm going to do exactly, you're going to do exactly as I tell you, because that's what you're supposed to do. And that's how playing Splatoon and all of the other Wii U games happened back then. And what would happen is if you had the Wii U gamepad and the laptop running at the same time, it would just completely lock up and freak out. So you really had to make sure that it was wrapped up good and tight so that nothing would happen. But then as homebrew matured, you ended up getting the homebrew channel on your Wii U, which then got a new app called HID to VPad, and what that basically means is that it converts controller inputs on your computer to gamepad, to a virtual controller that gets sent over to the Wii U, and then you can get that to imitate anything you want. So it could be one of the 4-player controller ports, or it could be the Wii U gamepad. And so that piece of software changed everything. It also let you do it either over Wi-Fi or through a cabled connection as well. So the main reason that was made was so that you could connect a PS4 controller to your Wii U and just play with a different controller that way. But just with a bunch of voodoo, I was able to do it with DDR instead. And that's how things are currently running. So,
yeah, no, because I noticed in the, for example, the Splatoon, I think it was a marathon VOD. I think it was from ESA, and the tutorial requires you to play with the gamepad. And I was like, that gamepad wasn't in foil, so it must have changed.
Yeah, exactly right. So, I don't know the specifics of how it allows to have both on at the same time, but I mean, I don't care. I'm just the end user, It's magic and it's voodoo. That's great as long as it works. And yeah, so with those advancements, it just meant that doing the speedrun was that much easier. Because one thing that I choose not to mention when I'm doing the speedruns, but it's just kind of a liberty I take, is that if you just wait in the tutorial for about a minute or so, just doing nothing, eventually it unlocks the camera so that you can just manually control it with any controller you want. But from a speedrun standpoint, you don't want to start your speedrun just standing there for a minute. Because 1, it's boring. 2, it makes resetting really, really dumb. And 3, it's just not a very good viewing experience. So I just decided, you know what, we'll just use the gamepad, and then as soon as we get to the lobby, switch off all the motion controls and just put it back up on its dock and leave it there. So
that's fun. That's really, I was wondering if there was some sort of fancy homebrew, and of course, not only is there fancy homebrew, but we even got the history of what it was like before, which is
for sure.
Always something with Nintendo homebrew stuff. I had one more. Oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah. So I was just going to say, if you go to like any Reddit threads surrounding connecting custom controllers or something to the Wii U, you'll probably find me commenting in there, asking questions like, can it work with a keyboard? Can it do this or that or the other? Because it was very much just the Wild West back then. And even though I wasn't a contributor to any of that, I was definitely part of the user experience,
Right.
and so I think a lot of that, a lot of that came back to make the products better in some way.
All right, so one more speedrun take. We got favorite and least favorite. How about a game that you would like to speedrun, but you have not gotten around to it yet, either for time reasons or because it doesn't fit with what you're currently doing?
A game I would like to speedrun. So I look at a lot of games, and usually the thing that stops me is how long the actual run takes. Usually what I do, I'll look at a speed run, I'll see what the world record is, and then I'll double it, because that will usually give me an indicator of how long I should expect my average runs to take. And so I wouldn't mind doing Mario 3D World. I think that would be a fun speed run, but the problem with 3D World is that you have to collect a bunch of green stars as you go. And in doing that, you also have to use the gamepad and the microphone in the gamepad and all sorts of stuff like that. So then I have to think to myself, do I make it so I don't use that at all, or do I incorporate it? Is it still a dance pad run at that point? You know, it's kind of the same thing as Splatoon, except I have the choice, and it's just one of those things where I just don't want to make that choice yet. So it's just sitting there on the bench. It's a game I might run at some point, but I'm not ready to make that choice yet.
So I had another setup question. Now the other night, you know, I noticed that you tweeted out a clip that was ostensibly about the terror of moths, but was useful to me because it showed me that you have some pretty cool stuff going on in your setup, and kind of the cameras and everything, being able to use your mobile as a camera source and other things. And so I wanted to ask, kind of where is it seems like you're pretty comfortable with tinkering, and not just tinkering in the very specific area of hooking up DDR pads to every console, but is there any sort of cool features of your overlay that you would want to brag about? Some tinkering that you've done to make things work?
Yeah, sure, I guess. So a lot of my setup actually runs from software called AutoHotkey. And so AutoHotkey is a program that lets you set up, it basically lets you set up hotkeys. And I know that doesn't seem like much, but it lets you run custom scripts based on keys that you press. Now, when you combine that with another program called JoyToKey, which lets you convert controller inputs to key inputs, suddenly you turn a controller into something that does whatever you want. And so what I have is I have a controller right here on my desk, and then I have a controller that's kind of hovering in front of the dance pads there. And I use that for when I do my splits to advance my speedruns. I use that for starting and stopping my streams, my music and my intermission screens and what have you. And I've set up a custom menu window as well, where when I press a button on the controller, it brings up the last 10 people that have chatted. And then if someone's being difficult, I can, tap down the list, press the button on them, and then it times them out. And so a lot of my tinkering and a lot of my setup has been how can I moderate my own chat, and how can I control my stream without leaving the dance pads? And so, I see how menus are implemented in games, and how games can combine different button combinations. So, for example, instead of just pressing like X, square, triangle, or circle to do an action, I've got it so that you can hold select and then press one of those, and it will do a different action to if you just pressed it on its own. So suddenly, instead of having 4 buttons, you've got 8 actions from 4 buttons. And so the whole thing just goes from there. Then, on top of that, I've got a special window management script as well. So certain programs that are open, such as when I'm speedrunning, sometimes I have a notes window that's up. And if there's no notes that are in that window, then it doesn't show it. If there are notes, then it will automatically put it up on the screen in front of me where I'm reading chat. But then if it covers chat, it moves chat above that as well. So, just a bunch of things that make the whole experience a good experience for me, so that I don't miss out on anything and don't have to step off and break the flow of my gameplay to do things.
No, yeah, I was really wondering about that, because speedrunners already, I think, especially if they're in the middle of a run, might be relying on moderators. Certainly some people feel like they only want to run games that have auto splitters, because could you imagine splitting yourself, which I feel like is a luxury. But it goes to the point of being able to manage things so you're having fun while streaming, and for you on the dance pads, that requires an extra layer, and it sounds like you've handled that in a really cool way, which I'm glad. I think someone in chat kind of poked me to ask the question, and I'm glad they did, because certainly it was worth hearing all the little things you have going on in the background.
For sure.
So, okay, you got a thought?
Oh no, the only thought I was going to say is that I've been part of the lower class of people that have been splitting manually for so long, and then Celeste came along with its auto splitter, and that's been great. I've really been enjoying playing Celeste without having to quickly get up, press a button, and then go back. And yeah, but I've definitely been on both ends of that, and I'm not a fan of manual splitting at all. I avoid it where I can.
So ordinarily, this would be about the point where I would ask people what they do to maintain good health for their wrists while using a gamepad, and to maintain good health while sitting down and being sedentary. I don't know about the former, but certainly the second isn't so much of an issue for you. Do you have things that you do to maintain good health, especially in the context of doing, rhythm games, speedruns, and dance pads, etc.?
I mean, I really should. If I'm being honest with you, I really should. So what I do have, which I'm not wearing so much now because it's summer and it's really hot here. But what I have are the tension, the arthritis gloves that you can wear, which kind of compress your hands a bit and improve the circulation. Those are great. What I have on the what I have on my DDR bars are they're like this foam padding that is used for both grip and for cushioning as well. Because what tends to happen is most of my body weight is actually supported in my arms and my hands. That way, I can move a bit faster while I'm pressing buttons, because I just kind of hold myself up and shuffle around. But what it does is it leaves this part here really, really sore after a while. And so it doing really prolonged streams really starts to hurt those parts of my hands. But aside from that, I don't know. I'd say it's just the same as working at a standing desk, you know, like I'm just kind of, I'm moving my legs around a lot, which is great. I think the worst part about standing is when you stand still for too long. And so, people kind of think I'm joking about it, but I do bring it up a lot, is that I find playing Mario games with dance pads a lot easier than playing Pokemon with dance pads, despite the fact that Pokemon is just a grid-based game where you press A. That is so much harder because you spend so much time just standing still, and the weight of your own body just kind of locks up on all your joints and things like that. So I'd say the most healthy thing that I do, which is what's encouraged in pretty much every office setup, is that I keep moving. The more I move, the better it is. Aside from that, though, I'm just standing around doing my thing.
No, I think it's good that you brought up the bit about, because the hands and arms, because certainly anyone watching will often notice, using the bar behind you for support, but it may not be obvious what stress or strain that introduces, and so to be aware of that, like, you're not just doing that for like comfort, just sort of like casually, like, no, it's like you're making it easier on yourself, but also that that introduces its own strain. All right, so I'm trying to think of what else, making sure I got my script here together, anything Now, did you have, so obviously the dance pad is your primary controller, but do you have any controller hot takes that you would want to share? You know, because, you know, you still have all of your Nintendo consoles, presumably. And so I
Yeah,
was
for sure.
curious if you feel like you would want to drop a particular hot take, you know, that the N64 GameCube is the best or worst or whatever the case would be.
So it's kind of funny. I'm actually pretty bad with most controllers. Like third person games, especially where you're controlling a character with one stick and the camera with the other. Like I didn't adapt to that very well, and I think a lot of that is because I grew up with 2D side scrollers, and then there was just a long period of time where I didn't really play any 3D games at all. Because like I said, I kind of went from Super Nintendo, and then I got the Nintendo DS, and yeah. So as far as controllers go, I want to say I really I like the PlayStation 4 controller, but aside from that, nothing else really jumps out to me as either good or bad, really. Like no controller is kind of actually no. You know what? Yeah, you know what? Now that it's all gone through my head, the Switch Pro controller has a horrible D-pad. That's the only take I'll have on that. On this subject, is that the D-pad on that thing is terrible. You can't play. I used it to play Mario Maker. You can't use it to play anything at all. It's stick all the way with that controller. I think it's great, but the D-pad itself is a nightmare to use.
Interesting.
So
I don't think I really spent much time with the D-pad on that controller. Recently, I've gotten into speedrunning a lot of like PlayStation 1 games, but like using the newer PlayStation controllers. And I've now become like a devotee of the PS3 DualShock D-pad, which apparently makes me a weird person. So no, I respect weird D-pad takes. I'm extremely here for those.
Yeah, I mean, I like the PS3 one as well. Like it kind of has a special kind of squishy feeling to it that you don't get in many other controllers. I think.
Yeah.
I definitely like that one as well.
All right, here's a broad question for you, because I feel like we've gone into a lot of technical details and history, but going forward, what would you say is the point or appeal of speedrunning for you?
That is what is the point? What is the point?
I mean, if it's to have fun, that's a great answer. Or you can go more in depth.
No, honestly, that really is it. The point / appeal is kind of the same thing for me anyway, because it started out as, how do I go beyond doing the challenge that I've already done, which was to beat the game. It was to see if I can do the tricks in the speedrun. And then it just kind of went from there. So for me, the appeal was overcoming the challenge. And then from there, that's kind of the point. I overcome the challenge, but I do it faster and faster. And because people like it. People seem to like speedrunning a lot more than they do casual playthroughs. And I feel like if there's ever a game that you want to play more of, but you don't just want to keep playing through the game and experiencing the same thing over and over, that's a different way of doing it, I suppose.
No, absolutely. That makes excellent sense. All right, so I think we're gonna start heading down to the exit path here. I feel like I've gotten most of what I wanted to do with the script. And one of the things I like to do in this interview series is add a little connective tissue by getting a question from my previous guest for my next guest. And so my previous guest, musical daredevil, who is in fact musical, does work as a musician with a gamer orchestra in the DC area, passed along this question, which is there a particular piece of video game music that really gets a response from you every time you hear it?
Yeah, there's a lot of those. Oh man, like, see, the great thing about doing rhythm games is that music kind of goes hand in hand with the experience, right? So you know, it's the same sort of thing. And depending on how you look at it, pretty much every game you play is a rhythm game in its own right, especially with platformers and whatnot. So easily, without a doubt, it's gonna have to be one of the Donkey Kong tracks. I couldn't tell you which, but you've got your aquatic ambience, you've got your sticker brush symphony, and then there's also Yoshi's Island as well. Like, so many great tracks came from those games, which just fully enhanced those experiences. And like, even with Pokemon as well, like Pokemon had so many good tracks through like the first 5 generations of the games. I don't know. There's just too many to name, but I think the earliest ones for me, the ones that like really hit me in the nostalgia, are definitely the David Wise Donkey Kong tracks, without a doubt. Yeah,
those are some pretty good ones. All right, now that does mean that I do need from you a question for my next guest. Now, my next guest will be a speedrunner. You get to know that. I'm not going to tell you anything else about them. The question doesn't have to be about speedrunning. Obviously, this was a question about music and gaming. So, take a second, think about it, and, hit me with what question you would provide to my next guest.
Okay. So if I had to ask, a speedrunner anything, it would. See, the problem is, though, this is kind of what you would ask every speedrunner anyway, which is what got them into the game that they're playing. So I can't really.
That does usually come up in my script. It's true.
Yeah, just a little bit. So what can I do? What can I do differently that isn't part of your speedrun podcast? Can we get back to it?
Sure. We'll come back to it in a second. We'll hit some of the other exit questions first. Are there any upcoming games that you are keeping an eye on and are excited to play?
Yes. So jumping back to what I was saying about Mario 3D World, how I wouldn't mind speedrunning that. Part of why I'm holding out is because the 3D World Deluxe is releasing on the Switch in March. And if that takes away all of the touchscreen and microphone elements, which I'm assuming it will, because it has to work both docked and in handheld mode, then hopefully I can just run that game, and that will solve all of my problems. So that's the one that I'm looking forward to. Aside from that, I am waiting to see the new Cuphead DLC to see if that's worth doing as well. But yeah, nothing else is really jumping out to me right now.
No, that's a good answer. I was expecting that when you mentioned Super Mario 3D World.
3D World, yeah.
Yeah, that I know a lot of people. One of the gaming podcasts I listen to has a person on it who is like, 3D World is a top all-time Mario game. More people should play it. So they were very excited when the Switch version was announced. Here's a question then. How about if you could press a button and send more viewership to somebody on Twitch, who would that be? Who would you like to promote?
I'm gonna have to go with my with my wholesome boy. We're gonna have to go with your boy Rudy. That's actually his name. Your boy Rudy is a super wholesome dude. He's been playing a lot of Mario World / Kaizo stuff, and he's recently gotten into speedrunning them as well. So, it's kind of an interesting dynamic because, as you know, Kaizo games are very, very stressful. Very, you die a lot, you get frustrated a lot, but he also has this very kind of chill vibe to him that just kind of takes away all of that stress and frustration. So it's, despite him playing these challenging, frustrating games, it's all GG happiness that just washes over you instead, which I think is a pretty interesting dynamic, and I think people need to see a lot more of.
Yeah, I definitely, whenever I watch people doing a particularly difficult challenge and they're able to maintain a certain level of zen, I think that's something I appreciate a lot. Because I know oftentimes I'll have streams on in the background, and I understand why one might get tilted at Kaizo. Very understandable, but it may not always make for a suitable background noise. I hate to say it, but cool. All right. So you said what the name was? There we go. I needed someone in chat to write the name in so I could. Excellent. There you go. Okay.
I think that's how you spell it. I'm just going to double check that though, because you got to do that. I think it's your boy Rudy, like YOUR.
Oh,
Let's see if I can get that.
Okay.
Yeah, there it is. I'll drop that in chat now.
Okay.
Okay.
Excellent.
Yeah, he's a great guy, no doubt. Also, chat. That means I'm seeing everything you guys are seeing. I see you guys in there trying to make me laugh.
Do you need me to stall for more time, or do you think you have a question yet?
No. Yeah. Okay. We'll go with the question.
Okay.
And it is. And I guess it really comes down to who they are. But
sure.
if you had to choose a speed game, or depending if they only do one, or a category to run for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Okay, so I think we'll have a good one. So right now, with as OverBoost Future goes, our next episode is going to be a GDQ preview panel. So I won't be using this question then, and there'll be a little break. But in mid-January, this person, which I'm going to DM to you, will have the opportunity. I think you'll probably recognize that name, right? They're involved in some things, so they'll be answering that question, but that won't be until mid-January. But that should be a good one for that. It's I feel like that's sort of like the desert island version, right? Like
pretty much,
speaking, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
All right. So where should people be looking for your stuff? What platform should they be finding you on?
Okay, so you can find me here on Twitch as well at twitch.tv/PeekingBoo. And I run/play every game pretty much on my channel with dance pads. There are some exceptions, but you'll just have to check it out to find out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, especially taking the time in terms of the time zone differences and doing the setup with this. I very much appreciate you, I guess maybe staying up and me getting up so that we could do this.
Yeah, no problem. And thank you for inviting me on here as well. It's been a good time.
Yeah, no.
I hope you guys in chat enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, excellent. No, I'm glad to have people along. Certainly, some people that you brought in as well. I appreciate that very much. Now, I do need one more thing from you though before we conclude the interview proper, which is that I'm gonna use a cheesy catchphrase like "Let's boost on out of here," and then I need you to give me your best rocket engine noise.
Okay. Okay, sure thing.
All right, folks, thank you so much for listening. Let's boost on out of here. So when you hear the recorded version, there'll be like a song that plays it out too, and everything that it fades in as you're making the rocket noise. So it'll be very good. Folks in chat, if you had any, if you have time for some Q&A, and if the folks in chat wanted to, I think a lot of these folks might know you already, but if they wanted to throw out questions and you wanted to answer them, we can do that.
That's all right. That's all right. They, for some reason, they don't ask me questions in my chat, so maybe they will in yours. Good luck, dudes.
Dark Souls when? That sounds like a meme question.
It is a meme question. So, for the uninitiated, I've got Dark Souls as a sub goal in my channel, and I've set it as a 500 sub goal so that it will never be attained.
That's right.
And if it does get attained, then hey, I have 500 subs. That's great. So one way or another, I'm either going to get rich or I'm going to be happy never playing Dark Souls.
Yes.
So
no, I've told people I'll play Sekiro if I get Twitch partner, and that's never going to happen, so I don't have to worry about playing Sekiro. Easy, simple.
God, I did Sekiro once, and I really don't want to do it again, honestly.
I'm doing good, Rice Cake Dummy. I hope you're having a good one. How did you get to be so handsome? That's an important question.
It's just natural, baby. What can I say? He asked this question. Well, no, he doesn't ask this question. He acknowledges this a lot. He Walsk has a very special place in my heart as a viewer and nothing more. So thank you, Walsk. And I'm doing good, Rice Cake. How are you today, dude?
Did you get any cool Christmas gifts?
Yeah, actually, hang on. I think. Hold up. Do I have it with me? Now, the cool thing about my setup, which we actually didn't touch upon in the podcast, is that I can walk away and chat, and you can still hear me no matter where I go.
This is the advanced stuff. This is the wireless stuff.
Yeah. So my grandma got me a pair of socks.
Ooh.
You know, as grandparents do.
Of course.
And in the spirit of 2020, let's see. Let's bring it up here. Let's flip this around the other way. Back off 1.5 meters. We've got some social distancing hand sanitizer Rona socks. Make sure to wear your mask, kids. But I just think that's great. You know? And yeah, you'll probably never see me wear it on stream, but there it is.
Well, I remember from watching one of your VODs that you had very specific opinions about socks on the pads, that like new socks were bad, but like slightly worn socks were the ideal conditions.
Yeah, wow, you must have just been trolling everything, man.
I like to try and prepare for these, you know?
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, for sure. So yeah. And exactly like you said, like the new socks, I don't know what it is about them, but they just have kind of this like slippery kind of unworn feel to them. But I feel like after they've been stretched a bit and they kind of lose their elasticity a bit more, they just kind of don't glide as much. I don't know why or what it is about it, but yeah. So every time I get a new pair of socks, it's a real pain to deal with.
Okay, Wandia, I got another question here, but I'm wondering if you actually have manta ray slippers or if that's just like a very generic Australia joke. No, you do have slippers.
No,
okay.
I do. It's man, that would be a really insensitive Australia joke, wouldn't it?
I feel like it would. I was concerned almost. That's why I prefaced it that way.
Yeah. No. Okay. There you go.
Oh, there you go.
Up close.
Okay.
We got. Every now and then I wear these as a kind of a joke, I guess. But these things, they slip around on the pads a lot. So it makes for a very difficult gaming experience. And the other thing as well is that because of these flaps that they have, you often just step on the other one. And so you trip yourself up a lot. But yeah, they do exist. So there you go.
All right. So Rice Cake Dummy's got a good one here. Have you destroyed a lot of socks playing Celeste?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So that kind of leads into the previous comment about new socks being bad. Is that I've actually just gone through about 5 pairs of socks since running Celeste in October. Now, prior to that, I was using pretty much the same pair of socks for, I want to say, like a couple of years. Like they were lasting a long time. But Celeste, compared to all of the other games, has just been really demanding physically, and the action that I have to do just slides my foot across a couple of screws that is just tearing holes in the bottom of them. So yeah, they are just getting disintegrated, and the socks that I'm replacing them with are very slippery, and it's been a really difficult adjustment period. So
that makes sense. I was wondering about that too, if it was a matter of like specific movements creating wear and tear, or if it's just, you know, stepping on the surfaces, but sliding movement across that surface would definitely make sense. All right. Well, I think in that case, I might let you go then.